This week on the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast, Sam and I got to sit down with Sharlet Jensen, a speech pathologist based in Seattle who's experienced the emotional process of retiring not one, but two therapy dogs, coping with the passing of her retired therapy dog, Johnny Utah, and breaking the news to her clients. Please remember to subscribe, follow, and like this podcast if you enjoy it. A good review will help us a lot too. Enjoy. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast. I'm Maxine, the social media manager for Therapy Dogs Australia. And with me today, we've got Sam King, the owner of Therapy Dogs Australia. How's it going, Sam?
Hello, everybody. It's scorching hot in Brisbane today
How
and
is it?
yesterday after we just had like 7 billion mils of rain.
Yeah, wow.
So the humidity is high.
Bit of a turnaround. We're joined today by Sharlet Jensen. How are you going, Sharlet?
I'm great, thank you. So excited to be on this because I've been listening to your podcast for probably about a year now. I think I've listened to just about all of them at this point.
Oh, that's so wonderful to hear.
That makes me feel famous.
I look forward to them coming out because I always learn something new from you guys. So I love it.
That is so wonderful. What lovely feedback.
That's actually exactly what I want to hear from everyone.
Yeah.
But it's the first time. Yes.
Yeah, we've been I've definitely, we've been following each other for a little while as well. So you have wonderful posts, really, really great informative posts on your Instagram. And I'm just thinking, actually, we might just mention it for everyone. What was your Instagram handle, Sharlet?
Yeah.
I can't think off the top of my head.
Speech_dogs. So speech dogs.
Yeah, everyone, I recommend going to follow Sharlet because, really great content. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Try to put as much educational content out there as possible because speech therapy dogs are not particularly well known. It's the speech language pathologists tend to get left out of the conversation when it comes to therapy dogs. And so that's kind of my mission, or has become my mission and my passion, to just let other speech therapists know that this is a possibility for us because there's not a lot of information specifically for our field on it.
So Charlotte, on that point, do you think that's like potentially a cultural thing? Do you think that speech and language pathologists are just like not really like in the States, that they're just not as widely understood? Because I feel like we have a lot of speech dogs. We're talking to speeches all the time. Like the species are grouped. We're all in allied health, so all of us, like psychs, OTs, speech, like, and we're like, all my kids see speeches. Like it's, I don't know, but I listened to did you listen to the telepathy tapes, Charlotte?
I have. Yeah, I've listened to just the first one was all.
Oh my gosh, you have to listen to it all. But I got a bit of a vibe from that as well, that maybe speech pathologists over there maybe are just not as understood, maybe.
Yeah, I will say, like, most of the speech therapy dogs that I found through social media and stuff are either in Australia, or it seems like England also has quite a few. But here in the United States, it's really hard to find them. They are out there. I've certainly had a lot of people contact me and say like, oh, I've been doing this for, 20 years sometimes. But I think they just haven't been putting out the information. And so people aren't seeing it. We're not seeing the representation here in the United States. But definitely we have OT dogs, occupational therapy dogs. Definitely see it with physical therapists, and then a lot in the mental health field.
I might interject there, actually. Do you want to, Charlotte, give the listeners just a bit of background, introduce yourself?
Yeah, that would make sense. So I'm Sharlet. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I've been practicing about 22 years. For the last 12 years or so, I've had a solo private practice. I'm about 2 hours north of Seattle in the United States here. So about 6 years ago now, out of desperation for a particular child that I was really struggling to build rapport with, I started bringing my dog Delta, who still comes with me today. And it was life-changing for me. It was life-changing for this kid, obviously life-changing for Delta because she had no idea what she was getting signed up for. But and again, at the time, like, it was hard to find really concrete how-to information on incorporating therapy dogs, especially in pediatric speech therapy setting. And so I kind of learned a lot through trial and error. And that was how we'll talk about Johnny Utah here in a few minutes, but that's how Johnny Utah, I already had him and started bringing him as well. But since then, it's just kind of taken over my life a bit. And I decided to just really try to not necessarily promote, because I think it's not the right fit for everybody to have a therapy dog, but for speech therapists who do feel like it would benefit their patients and that are animal lovers and maybe have a dog that would be a good fit, or are interested in seeking out a dog that would, have the right temperament for the work, just to let them know that it is possible.
Yeah, that's pretty much, like what we are all about as well. It's really cool. I think that Max is Charlotte, our first international guest.
Yeah.
Pretty cool for us to be talking to somebody from America.
It's cool. Yeah. Just realized that.
And so our topic today is going to be retiring therapy dogs. Yes, because you listened to our podcast about Sunny.
Yes.
Yes, and so we did say we're going to come back and talk more about it, more about finishing up with a dog, and whether that's because they pass away or they're retired. And you reached out to us and let us know that you've got some experience with this, and so we're going to hear your thoughts today. Was that what we had? Anything else that I'm missing there, Matt?
No, that's it. Yeah, the focus is definitely Johnny Utah. So Delta actually was your first therapy dog, is that right?
So Delta, So Delta is my half Labrador, half Great Dane, and she was a rescue. And so I had her about a year before she started coming to work with me. And I got her with the hopes that she'd be able to do some therapy dog work. Unfortunately, when we got her, we were kind of misinformed about the level of her needs from the rescue that we got her from. And so we had to, take a step back and do a lot of socialization. She really had some big fears, especially around men. And so it took a lot longer than I was thinking. But again, the timing worked out perfect in that I had this kid that was fairly new onto my caseload, and brought her originally just to see him. And it worked really well. So kind of built from there. And then I already had Johnny Utah. So I got him from a breeder as a puppy, and he was 8 years old. Just a few months after I started bringing Delta, COVID hit. He was in training to hopefully start coming to work. I was working to get our Canine Good Citizen award from the American Kennel Club, which according at the time, that was what my liability insurance, my professional liability insurance required in order to cover him. And so COVID happened 2 weeks before that was scheduled. And so I did kind of just throw Johnny Utah into the work, partly because I was only seeing 6 kids a week. I was suddenly down from like 25 to 6 kids. And I felt like he was ready, and you didn't have any major concerns as far as liability issues. No dog is 100% safe, but he was, really loving. And I knew that he loved people and loved kids and stuff. So kind of threw him into the work.
What's his breed?
He's a Brittany. So I actually have a picture of him
he's a
here.
Brittany. That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So he passed away last August. So he's been gone for about 6 months. But
what a handsome boy.
Look at him.
He was just the best dog, and he was like the easiest dog to bring into therapy dog work too, because he had that drive to love people. He just loved everybody equally. And because he was 8 years old when he started, Brittany's are a very high energy breed and very driven, but he had, calmed down a bit by that age too, where he still had enough energy to make it through the day and greet everybody, but not so much that, that he was jumping all over everybody and causing chaos.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And starting at 8 years old as well, because we haven't probably touched too much on that, Sam, have we, in terms of like more senior starts?
But we get it all the time though. We definitely do. And it's like a similar story to what you're saying, Charlotte, where people are like, this dog just actually is so cool. Like, this dog's great. It can be a bit tricky. I always sort of try and prepare people that, like, when they're a bit older, if they're not used to being worked, like if they don't have a work ethic about them, then it might be a bit of a shock to them to prepare for their assessments. But usually they fly through the temperament assessment side of things really easy because they're just so chill. But, just to manage our expectations around how quickly we can prepare them for the kind of work that's involved to get through their obedience and manners assessment. Not that it's heaps, but just if they're not used to it.
For him, the hardest thing was when he started coming, just that what I refer to as just energy conservation across the day, because he was so people driven. He wanted to just be a part of everything day in and day out, but he was older, so he needed that extra rest and decompression throughout the day. And it took him a long time to find that balance of, like, if I'm sitting at the table with the kid and we don't need him right this second, that he could go just, separate from us and lay down on his bed. That was really hard. I'm currently working with another Brittany Spaniel, my mom's dog Sky, who's 4 now, but she started coming with me last year when she was about 3. And my mom lives on the property with us, so I have a real strong bond with Sky, even though she's not technically my dog. But she's, definitely she loves people. She's got that same drive to just interact with people. I think most Brittany's do. But we're definitely working on some boundary issues where she just thinks, she loves everybody. Everybody should love her and just want her in their lap. And yeah, but so it'll be interesting to see as I think it gets another year or so under her belt. I think that will help her out a lot too.
Yeah.
So with Johnny Utah, did you have time to plan for his retirement? How did that?
Yeah. What's the story there?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, so he worked with me for 3 years, and he did have a heart condition. He had left mitral valve defect, which is a very common heart condition. Certain breeds have it more than others, and then also as dogs age, it's a fairly common one. I had a previous Brittany that had that and had passed away at the age of 7. He was diagnosed with it, and this previous Brittany, whose name was Harvey. He was diagnosed with it, and the cardiologist said we probably had about a year to 18 months, and he only made it 3 months. So,
wow.
Yeah, so that was really heartbreaking. So when Johnny got diagnosed with that, I went through a period of just absolute panic, of course. Unfortunately, he did really well with it. We sought out some help from a holistic vet, got some, nutritional advice and some acupuncture and things like that. And who knows if that's what made the difference or if it was just, individual differences. We'll never know. But he was doing really well for a long time. And then as he approached about the age of 12, it started to progress to the point where, he was showing some definite signs of being tired. But honestly, at 12, that's a pretty good age for a Brittany anyways. Their average lifespan is only 11 to 13. So he'd had the heart defect for a while, but really a little bit before his 12th birthday, he started really showing some signs that it was, we had to put him on medications. He didn't handle the meds particularly well. It was really hard on his appetite. So getting enough food in him was hard. And so I did make the decision to retire him. We had about a month notice. I, kind of let families know. He was only coming with me 1 day a week at that point anyways. And I had my other dog, Bodhi, that I'll talk about in a minute too. He was a young pup. And so we had gotten Bodhi knowing that Johnny was retiring at some point, just given his age, and hoping that Bodhi would be able to be Johnny's successor. So as we got close to Johnny needing to stay home, just let everybody know. Everybody was super supportive. They loved, even after Johnny stopped coming, I had certain families in particular that just continued to ask about him a lot. But one thing that was really interesting was how the kids responded, because they took it pretty well. Like, I was a little bit surprised. Some of them had a really close relationship with him, but I was still, because he was still at home, I was still bringing pictures and, talking about him and sharing stories for those kids that were especially bonded with Johnny. So it wasn't like an abrupt break per se. But I had a couple of kids that have some definite working memory issues. Again, I'm working with kids with various developmental delays. And, like months later, they'd be like, when's Johnny coming next? And it's like, oh, remember, he's not coming anymore. He's too old to come. And one girl in particular, it was like about every 2 or 3 months, it would come up as like, where's Johnny? Just that genuine confusion. So, definitely in the future, when I do this, I want to make sure I have some sort of like visual, like a social story or something like that to make it more concrete for those kids that have those, more cognitive impairments and things like that need that constant reminder, maybe something that they can even take home with them as well.
Yeah. And how was it for you managing? Because that would be tough for you as well.
Yeah.
Having the kids ask, and how is that for you managing that?
So I was, for the most part, just so grateful that I'd had those 3 years of him coming to work with me, because I just, even though he was 8 years old when he started coming, I felt like I learned more about him, and our bond strengthened so much when he did start coming to work, and just seeing his funny little personality come to life, and his little quirks, and how the kids just loved that. So I felt like I had so many more memories, so much richer memories. I really wish I'd gotten more photographs. At the time, I wasn't, thinking about, letting this information be known to other people and stuff. So I wasn't taking the photographs the way I do today. So I do have a few that are very precious to me, but not as many as I would like. The hardest part, honestly, was in the mornings, getting Delta ready to go, or Bodhi was coming with me at that point, then 1 day a week, getting the other dogs ready to go. Johnny would get so excited, like every day for months. He was like, okay, it's my turn, it's my turn. And I still did extra things with him. I took him to, we've got some trails near us and stuff, and I tried to make that extra special time for him where he got to go in the car and do something special. But again, he was, starting to have some health issues to where I couldn't do nearly as much as I would have liked to have done with him, that one-on-one quality time. But that was the part that was always the hardest, was seeing his just genuine excitement in the morning as I was getting ready to go to work, because I knew that he didn't understand. And it also just kind of confirmed to me how much he had loved it, that for therapy dogs that are a good fit for this work, it really can enrich their lives. And I think it really enriched his life.
Aww.
That's lovely. So I have had some similar things. So Sonny was just saying, like, he retired from my clinic, but he still worked from my home clinic. So I've got a clinic and it's like a group practice, and then I have my home clinic as well. And definitely, like, yeah, you'd explain to people like, oh, like, he's retired, and then they just forget or whatever, and they're like, when's Sonny coming back in? And I'm like, he's retired. But I definitely didn't. Yeah, I saw as well, like, kids like would ask about him all the time, like, how's Sonny? Like, but I've got photos of Sonny everywhere, like through, like,
Yeah,
I've got
I do
photos of
too.
all the animals. So they will,
Yeah.
like, look at the photos and go, how's Sonny going? And I would always be able to be like, oh, he's great, like, he's doing this or that. And I might have like a recent, photo or video on my phone that I could show them, or something like, this is what he's up to, and da da da. And that was one of the things that I knew, like, that's gonna happen, like, and I'm gonna have to say that he died, like, when that happens again. So how'd you go with that part?
Yeah. So, again, I was fortunate. I retired him in May of 23, and he lived until August of 24. So way longer than we thought. His health was not great, but he was still super happy. And so we were just going with quality of life, and whatever he wanted to do, he got to do for over a year. And then he did pass away at home, which I was so grateful for. All my other dogs, I've had to do euthanasia, and I'm so thankful that we have that as an option for our animals. Having my dad passed away from cancer, and seeing him suffer in those last days, I'm so grateful that for animals we don't have to go through that with them. But he had, been at home by just sheer coincidence. My husband had taken that day off of work, and we'd been, having a great day as a family. And that evening, he just collapsed and was gone. And so it was shocking. I mean, we knew it was coming. We'd had some moments where we thought maybe we were going to have to make that decision, and then he'd kind of bounce back a little bit. And so it was shocking, but in the grand scheme of things, it was the best possible passing for him.
Yeah.
And then the next day, so I had 3 families in particular that I knew that I was still seeing, that, still asked about him all the time. And I knew had particularly, strong relationships with him. And so the next day I did let them know, and just said, just texted their parents and said, here's what happened. He passed away at home. It was unexpected, but peaceful. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk. And 2 of the all the families responded, of course, with grief, but 2 of them said that, they took that evening and just kind of went around the table with their kids and shared some memories of him. And then they shared what the kids had said. And so that was really emotional, but really positive. And again, I'm a speech therapist. I'm not a mental health counselor, so I don't know the best way to go about grief stuff with kids. But I think it overall went really well. By the time he passed, a lot of the kids that I had been seeing when he was working with me, had moved on, had been discharged. So there was really only a few families where it was particularly important that they knew that he had passed away.
Yeah.
That's
You know,
beautiful.
it's really interesting because it's just really similar to like what happened with Sunny. So the same thing, like we were home the day before, like all home all day, and like had a big dog day, like and the dogs, had a great day on the Sunday, and then we woke up to the Monday where he was not where I wish that he had just died in his sleep, but he was very unwell and I had to make that decision, and that was really hard, which we could talk about that more another time. But it's I like didn't expect it to be I have euthanized another dog and my cat before. And they've all just been they've been really sick, and Sunny was really sick too, but it's just weird. Like it's just weird because you call so I was calling for me.
I was gonna say it's the phone call that's the hardest. Making that phone call to make the
Yes,
appointment is just getting through that is so hard.
The decision.
I wanted a home. I didn't want to take him to the vet. I wanted
Right.
someone to come to the house, but making that call was the difference between trying to see if we could fix him or just put him down. So I was like making that decision, whereas my other animals were already at the vet, and the vet was like, oh, like it's, like they're telling you, this
Right.
is probably the decision to make, Whereas when, I was making that decision and I was like, oh man, this is it's a wild thing to make that decision. Was pretty crazy for me. But anyway, so I had families respond in a similar kind of way to what you said about families, how they responded, and some of them they really took time, and do you know what else happened? So I had I did a stepped, a graded letting people know. I only let the people know that I knew I had to let them know. I took a week off and I only let the people know that I had to because they come to here and would be like, where's Sunny? Where's the dog? So I let those guys know first, and then then it was a couple of weeks or something, and I started to gradually I put something on our Facebook page, and I put something on Sunny's Facebook page, and so some people found out that way, and I put nice picture of him up and stuff like that, and then I was letting people know in their appointments, as they'd ask about him and stuff like that. Now that we're it was in November, so now that we're a few months down the track, it's heaps easier for me. If someone brings it up, it's a lot easier for me to handle the conversation, because it's it's easier for them because it's it was last year,
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Everything's
Exactly.
okay because it was last year, kind of thing. And so it's we can be sad, but I was worried about them being sad for me, and being sad for themselves as well. But you know what? I let someone know, and the mum was like, oh, that's when was that? And I told her, and she was like, oh, that's so interesting, because at that time, so Sunny hadn't been in the clinic for years, and hadn't seen this kid for years. But I give pictures of the dogs out, to the kids. He had been walking
I've got little
around.
business cards with the dogs, pictures on them that the kids love to collect.
Ours are postcard size, a normal photo, 6x4 something. He had been walking around with the picture, randomly at that time, which is what that's wild to me. And she was and she said something to him about it. She's like, what have you got there? And he's like, oh, just, and he had said actually something quite thoughtful, about that what he was doing. But it didn't mean anything really at the time. But then obviously when I let her know that he had passed away, she was like, oh, that, huh.
Yeah, interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, the bonds that they make with these kids is just incredible.
So that was a bit of a tough one.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a tough chat. I was like, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay.
I did bring in Johnny had like real long curly hair on his tail. So I did take a lock of his hair and I've got it in the office on top of his picture frame. Because I still have one picture. I've slowly changed a couple of pictures out to include Sky now, my new partner. But so I've got his lock of hair up there, and I've got a couple of kids that like to just hold it and feel it, and they're real gentle with it. And I'm not sure exactly what it means to them, but they do like to get it down and see his little lock of hair. So
my clinic room is like, this is like a little sort of side room off of like this bigger like room, like a garage, but it's like a lounge room, and that's my clinic room. So the kids, there's this door here, it doesn't have, it's just a doorway, so they can get in here. And behind me here, that's Sunny's ashes in the middle. And then on the black frame is a picture of my cat that passed away that a lot of my kids knew. And the one right on the end is another dog that I had that passed away like 5 years ago or something like that. And some of my kids, like, they want to come in and like stand and look at the,
yeah,
that they might say something to Sunny. The cat is buried in the front garden. Some of them want to go and like say hi to Bobby and stuff like that. I think that kind of like the visual, I think it's quite helpful, even though it seems like sad and weird and like get like, when the kid's goldfish dies and you quickly flush it and buy another goldfish, like blah, like no, death, grief, get it out of here. I don't know, they seem to be, the kids are like fine, but he, like you said, like, he was old and stuff, so I think it's easier to understand, because I guess that's what happens when you get old. But it's been interesting. They like want to come in, and some of them are like they haven't really had much of a reaction, like, but some of them, they're just all different. And I guess that's the thing about grief, is that it is different for everyone. But I certainly have found that having something like these are actually like, this is like a really weird bookshelf now, because it's like
more of a memorial,
a pet cemetery.
Yeah. I wonder whether it's something also just about making the grief more tangible, like the lock of hair, or like it's like grief in its in a form, so to speak, or
definitely. And so for some people that's important, and for others it sort of hasn't been. Like a kid said to me the other day, Penny was playing, was it Penny? Whatever. One of the dogs was playing tug and growling, and Sunny always did that. And whoever was doing it like doesn't always do that, And they were like, "Oh, that's like Sunny. That reminds me of Sunny." And I'm like, "Yeah, that is like Sunny."
Yeah. I did have Bodhi that I was bringing with me, my Catahoula puppy, who was intended to be Johnny Utah's successor. And he worked with me for about a year, and was really great with the kids. But as he aged, so he worked with me from the age of about 1 to about 2, he just got really less and less outgoing towards adults, and started to get a little bit where he was like kind of shying away from them and just not thriving in the work. It was great that he did so well with the kids, but it was clearly just having adults coming in and out and was starting to stress him out. And so I did choose to retire him as well. And that was a lot harder. I had a lot of families who were very upset about that. Again, they knew coming up. Actually, how I broached it was I was going to put him on like a 6-month break and just see if he needed some more time to mature. And I did go back to, working with my obedience trainer and things like that, doing, more socialization outings to see if that would improve. And it just didn't. It just wasn't his thing. And so that was harder. I had a lot of families who were like, "Well, can't you just bring him for our session?" It's like, well, I live like an hour round trip away. So it's like logistically not really possible. Like, yes, he always did great with your family, and I appreciate that. But, really, it has to be one or the other for him. And so that was harder in some ways on me, just because I had, families who were disappointed, even though I was still bringing Delta, so most days there was still a therapy dog there. they had grown attached to him and, had seen him because I got him as a puppy. So seeing the pictures that first year before he started coming to work with me and got really, behind him becoming a therapy dog. And so that was an interesting experience, but he loved it. Like he was like, okay, no more work. Great.
I was gonna say, what made you go? My friend's got Catahoula. What made you choose a Catahoula, Charlotte? Do you live on a farm?
I do, yeah. So I've got 5 acres and I've got horses and goats and chickens and all that. Yeah. So we
Love
homestead here. So we got a Catahoula because that's what we thought Delta was. When we rescued Delta, that's what we had been told. And then about a year after we got Bodhi, because we're like, Delta's, so great at this work, other than a little bit around adult men. So like when dads would come in, she's not anything that was going to cause a problem, but she would just kind of shy away and not be real outgoing with adult men. But so about a year after we got Bodhi, thinking that we were getting a Catahoula because Delta was a Catahoula and doing so well, we got a DNA test gifted to us for Christmas, and it turns out she's half Great Dane and half Lab, so no Catahoula at all. But that was originally, it was a breed that both my husband and I have always really loved. They're beautiful and really fun, but definitely not as an overall temperament wise, a real outgoing dog. I think they tend to be better like one-on-one with the family than say, greeting a ton of people. And that was kind of, him and my experience with him. And so I don't think we'll go with another Catahoula, at least for the purposes of therapy dog work in the future, but we are kind of starting to look at, adding another dog to the family. Delta's around 9 now. And then I've got little Sky, but she's my mom's dog. And my mom's like, I don't want her gone more than 1 day a week because she's my mom's companion. So I was really excited when I listened to the most recent podcast or the most recent before recording this on the puppy temperament testing. I was like literally writing notes. I'm like, yes. So many ideas. But so not kind of casually looking at this point. I'm not desperate to start with my next recruit, but just starting to get excited about the idea of it.
Part 2 is going to be coming soon as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So stay tuned. I think we're recording that this week.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, Thursday.
It'll be not long.
The next few weeks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're all very keen for part 2. Actually, so if you have any questions, tell us them because
the biggest thing for me is we're really leaning towards going towards a shelter dog. And so a lot of times it's harder to get that behavior, that temperament testing. Some shelters do temperament testing, but it seems to be really hit and miss and what they consider temperament testing or not. So I think, I know a lot of our local shelters try to have puppies out in the foster care to where they're not in the actual shelter itself, but just kind of what to look for, any tips and tricks for, in that more stressful environment of a shelter. Especially when you don't necessarily have the genetic background. And whatever dog we get, it'll be a forever dog for us. Like Bodhi, it's not the end of the world if they're not thriving in the therapy dog work. But obviously I can't imagine going back to working without a therapy dog, at least most of the time. And so it's a lot of pressure and it's hard because I know from firsthand experience, not every dog is cut out for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all good to we're going to keep the dog anyway. Like, same, I would too. But then, okay, so now at least every second dog you get needs to be right.
Right.
Or else we're in a bit of shit as far as doing animal-assisted therapy goes.
You'll be running a sanctuary.
Yeah. We also have a 14-year-old Beagle. So we've got 3 dogs. And then plus I do a lot of the work with my mom's dog Sky, taking her for all of her walks and things like that because my mom's elderly and isn't able to give Sky nearly the outlet that she needs, her little Brittany energy. So yeah,
I know other people. Sorry, I was just going to say I know that there would be people in our community that would definitely want advice on what to look for a shelter dog. So that's a great one.
Forgot about. And I know there was an actual question there because I got distracted by how funny it is, well, how stressful it is really trying to get your hands on the right dog. We got a little secondhand Staffy here, and she's just a pet dog, but she's actually shaping up to be a pretty cool little dog. And we think she's probably about like 9 months oldish or something like that. And so I'm like, oh, well, maybe she might be a therapy dog, like maybe, but she's a pet, so it doesn't matter either way, whatever. But Nala's 5, so Oliver's 10 this year, so it won't be that long. He's loves his work still, so I won't be firing him. He loves it, but I'm noticing just a little bit slower,
bless him.
slower to get up and stuff like that. So, I'm increasing his joint support, and I do all the naturopathics and stuff as well, just to kind of give him the mobility to be able to do what he wants to do. But then, okay, so go 10, and then Nala's turning 6. So the next dog, so this Staffy, Penny, who cares? Do whatever you want. Like, whatever. You're a pet.
Yeah.
You don't have to. It's the only animal here that doesn't have a job at the moment. Like,
freeloader.
Whatever. Do whatever. Actually, we did a little barn hunt this morning, so maybe she does have a job, because I found a mouseus and the dogs are in there with me, and I was like, "There's a mouseus there, Penny," and she lost her mind, and it was hilarious. Her and Nala lost their minds over it, and it was like watching like Dumb and Dumber. Like, it was so funny. They were like tripping over each other. They didn't get it. Like, they nearly had it, and then they didn't get it, and then they were like just so jazzed up, just hopped up on Mountain Dew, and I was like, I had to talk them through it. I was like, "Hey, girls, so next time, instead of just like a mad panic, and like falling over each other, just like get the mouse." Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
maybe try that as a strategy. Like, but we've had this test run now. It's all good. Like, it's fine.
Johnny Utah was my one who was fast enough to catch things, and he would bring things in the house, like, because he was Brittany, they're bird dogs, so they used to like retrieving something to you. So I'd get dead things occasionally, moles and rats and things. And he'd be so proud. Like, he couldn't be mad because he was so proud of himself.
As long as they're already dead, that's fine. It's when they bring alive stuff and they're like, check this out.
Or half alive,
Yeah. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. But yeah, so my next dog, like, can't really be a, like, otherwise who am I going to work with? Like, because Oliver will retire, and then Nala will be 6. We're not getting another dog anytime soon. So Nala will be 8-ish. Maybe a bit more, like, so the next one kind of needs to be, unless Penny works out, and she becomes a therapy dog. But yeah, it is tricky, this progression planning. That's a part of your retirement planning with your dogs as well, and being able to retire, like a dog like Oliver that's 10 and just sort of starting to slow down but loves it. It needs to be the case that at any point I can say, oh, okay, you don't go anymore. Like, like your body's it's not what's right for you anymore. So that's what you're not going to do. And we don't want, like, to feel like you had the pressure that you feel sometimes from the client, like, oh, but my child really needs the dog to be here. We have a big problem with that at our clinic, where families are very, very adamant that there must be a dog there. And it's very hard for them to understand that that's not really the case, because the therapist is there. But like, having the dog there is great. But
I've had families offer, they're like, you can use my dog if you want. And I'm like, well, it doesn't quite work like that, because like, I don't know your dog, it's very different. But something you said made me think too, the other thing is that's kind of challenging about this work is, as Delta is aging, but definitely with Johnny Utah too, it's like, you're always wondering, is there something more I should be doing? Because you can go, I went, way down the nutrition track and stuff with him. And I think, I'd like to think that's partly why he did as well as he did for as long as he did. And the same with Delta, she's 9, and my vet, or around 9, she's a rescue, so we don't know for sure, but she's at least 9, I guess we should say. On the last vet appointment, my vet was, checking all of her joints, and she was like, I'm just amazed. I rarely have a dog this age that I don't recommend going on joint support. And so that's great to know. We did senior blood work and everything is, pristine, but we make our own dog food. They get a lot of natural treats, and my holistic vet unfortunately has moved out of the area a couple of years ago, so I don't have that support. I'd have to go quite a bit farther afield to find that support. Love my traditional vet, and she's very open-minded and very willing to support me in exploring different things. But it is always that, like, well, what if I added this, or what if I buy this supplement, and you can kind of drive
Yes.
yourself crazy.
Yes.
Mm.
The so Narelle Cook from Canine Pharmaceuticals, she talks about lion's mane mushroom. So I gave that. I was giving that to Sunny, and now I'm giving it to Oliver, but it's to sort of protect them from dementia.
Yeah, the cognitive function.
The cognitive function. So that's like the main, like, and I just think, why not, like, why not just, I only give it to the senior dogs, just in case, because that cognitive stuff can be the thing that makes dogs like unpredictable and as they get older. So I have to be aware of that sort of stuff,
right?
But yeah.
And that was interesting too with Johnny Utah. My vet commented on that too, that with the heart condition, they're getting less oxygen to their brain and stuff. And so the cardiologist had really prepared me to look for signs of dementia, and he never really had any of those issues. And it kind of made me wonder too, if the working, especially since he started work later in life, if just that stimulation that he got coming to work too kind of helped provide some protective, we'll never know, but
be an interesting study for someone to do, because Sonny never got any dementia either, and he was like just on 13, but I was giving him lion's mane for the last however many years, but he didn't. He was like definitely losing his hearing or ability to do what he's told.
Or he was just selective.
They kind of, once they turn 10, I just let them do whatever. So do you know what I mean? Like,
lucky Oliver.
He's just gonna make it till September, and then he gets to do whatever he wants. So, those are the rules. Double digits, do whatever you want.
Yeah. And that was with Johnny too, because he was 8 years old when I started working with him, and he didn't really know any tricks or anything, like that. Like, he was just happy to hang out with the kids, and that was my main goal for him anyways. But at the time I was thinking, well, he's probably only going to do this work for a little while, so I didn't put out the effort to really teach him a lot of things. And then he just kind of kept working and kept working and kept working, and I was like, I should have 3 years ago thought to teach him to do a few things, but it wasn't necessary. That's just kind of the icing on the cake when it comes to therapy dog work, if they can do some tricks. But mainly it's that bond that's so important.
Yeah. But I do, maybe I think that would be an interesting study question for someone to ask, is like, these dogs that are, or any working dog, like, are they less likely to get dementia? Because I'm pretty sure that's the case with people. So
yeah, because I think I know from watching my dogs, they're trying to figure out what's needed in the moment. Should I come closer? Should I back off? And the kids are different from day to day. And then we do a lot of the puzzles. I know you've talked about the dog problem solving puzzles too. I use those in so many different ways in sessions. I find so much communication can be elicited through using those, and the kids love them, the dogs love them. So they're having to work that brain all day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think there's probably something to that, but it's a question for any of the academics that are listening. That could be one of your research.
There we
go. So I mean, we might as well talk about, so like, talking today about retirement plan and stuff like that. But yeah, choosing the next dog will definitely, well, we're talking to Serena about part 2 about the puppy temperament stuff and things like that. But the things that you noted about getting a dog from a shelter, that they are very real challenges around, temperament testing a dog that's in that environment, and then who's doing the temperament testing, and what do they know, like, about what you're hoping to get from the temperament of the dog. So, what they think might be suitable versus what you think might be suitable might be 2 totally different things as well. Yeah, I do. Is Delta Merle? Is that why you thought she was? Caterpillar?
Yeah. Well, that was what the rescue. Yeah. She's a black Merle.
Yeah. So for example, so if anyone doesn't know the breed Caterpillars, a lot of them are like that Merle kind of coloring, like that, like you see your border collies and Aussie Shepherds and stuff of that Merle coloring. but the temperament of a Catahoula is totally like opposite to like a Great Cross or a Lab.
Very
So,
intense. The Catahoulas are very intense in both good ways and bad ways. Like everything Bodhi
yeah,
goes to do, he's like 100% focused on. And it can be hard to like shift that focus or just get him to chill out.
yeah. Well, on the American Kennel Club website, it says the breed requires firm guidance and early socialization as they can be independent, territorial, and protective.
Mhm.
For the same reasons, they do not allow mistreatment and will assert themselves in self-defense.
No.
And I think, you know, we kind of knew that going in, and I
Mm.
had a little bit of that hubris of like, well, I'll just do so much socialization. And I had, you know, a great trainer that I'd worked with Delta and Johnny Utah, and you know, really kind of thought I could overcome any that of that. And then I look at like Sky, my current Brittany that I'm working with, who didn't have any socialization for the first 2.5 years of her life, like was just my mom's companion, literally never been off the property other than like walks in our neighborhood. And she just like loves everybody and is totally
Yeah.
chill around people and loves other dogs, has no dog reactivity. You know, so just that genetics is so, so huge. And it is
Absolutely.
what it is.
And then
Yeah.
that's hard because when you get a dog from a shelter, they are guessing the breed as
Mm.
well.
Mhm.
So, like, you can end up in that kind of scenario where they're like, yes, Labrador cross, but it's really like something totally different. And that,
Yeah.
you know, as especially if they're young, and then as they get older, because it is around that sort of 2-year-old mark that they kind of reach that maturity, and we can see, yeah, like our grown-up behaviors start to come out. And
Mhm.
that's like makes sense that you saw that stuff at that time. So like we're waiting. We've got a livestock guardian dog who's about 14 months, and we're waiting for that to happen to us.
Yeah. Especially like those hounds that are mature a little bit more slowly and stuff too. So
Exactly. Yeah, that's
yeah.
her. I'm like, oh man, I wonder what she's going to be like when she's a grown up.
We will see.
We'll see. Yeah. Oh well, we'll deal with it.
Mhm.
Whatever it is. I think she'll be right. Yeah, so retirement planning, and you know, the transition out. So the families that when Bodhi retired, did you see, was there dramas around human animal bond stuff? Like were people sad? Like how were the kids
The
did you
kids
miss him?
honestly were fine. Like, and again, so I upped how much Delta was coming with me. I only work part-time. And so Delta was coming with me all 3 days that I work at that point, which was a little bit too much for her. I wouldn't do that again. But she was okay, but I could tell like after the third day, she was pretty tired. Um, it was more the caregivers really than the kids, the families that the
Mm,
parents, I mean, that were just like, they wanted to know like, well, what happened? I was like, well, nothing happened yet. I just didn't want something to happen.
mm,
If I continued to put him in a situation that he wasn't comfortable in.
yeah.
And especially as I was getting new, people on my caseload and things like that, new families coming in, there's always, that kind of that cycling through. And it seemed like the families that he'd met as a puppy, he was great with. And then the families that were newer to him, he was starting to have some of that shyness and kind of, jerking away when people would go to pet him. And so, trying to not, to have my boundaries of like, you don't have to know everything behind this decision, but
Yeah.
also, giving them enough information to where they understood. And,
Mm.
again, that was when I started having families like, well, why don't you use my dog? I can drop my dog off in the morning. That's like, well, it doesn't work like that.
Mm.
There's so much that goes into it.
A
um,
wild idea.
yeah,
I know.
some random dog dropped off. It'd be a fun experiment, but I don't know if I'd want to take responsibility for it.
No,
Yeah,
no way.
that's
Yeah.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah. You're running a daycare.
So the
Yeah.
other
Doggy
thing that I
daycare.
think I would do, or I will do differently, like when I had Bodhi, I had made like a chart. I had Delta and Johnny Utah coming with me at the time, and I had like a chart up on the wall that was like all of the steps Bodhi would have to take to make it to therapy dog. And so the families were getting to know him even before they met him in person, and
Yeah.
like seeing him graduate puppy level 1, graduate puppy level 2, all those little markers I had. And so they were pretty invested in him starting to come. And I think probably in the future when I get a puppy, I won't, I'll still let families know and talk about it just because it's, bonding and
Yeah.
building rapport with families, and I'll want to talk about my puppy, but I don't know if I'll be quite as transparent that like I'm hoping this is going to be a therapy dog. I think I'll just kind of be a little more cautious and wait and see, and then bring it up when it's something that's actually going to be happening.
Yeah, that's a tough one, hey, because I've seen people do similar, especially schools do it sometimes when someone gets a puppy and they start advertising straight away, like, we've got a therapy dog puppy and it's going to do training and blah 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 and all this stuff, and then the dog's not right, and so then it's like, oh lol, jokes, like, tricked you, like, there's no dog
Yeah.
so
That would be pretty tough for the kids.
yeah,
Who
they're
are so
expecting,
invested.
yes, like they're expecting a dog. So I definitely, yeah, I can see that going either way. The thing that I did that I don't know that I would do again is I have taken my puppies into my clinic with me. So Oliver and Nala, they were in a playpen in my clinic room. They only interacted with humans if the dog like naturally woke up, and it was someone that I knew was gonna, not do silly things and let the puppy bite them and stuff like that. And I had another dog outside of the playpen, like a trained therapy dog. So the positioning for the client was like, so this is your therapy dog, Oliver, and Nala is a baby, and she's just in there because she's a baby, like, so she's just being in the playpen so that she's not at home for a million hours by herself. So that was all cool, all good, and they both turned out like perfectly, which is cool. But they're a border collie and a Labrador, so like the odds were stacked in my favor. But with Nala particularly, I think it dulled her down. I think that it made her, it like capped her drive. So when we're at the clinic now, like at age 5, but certainly probably since age maybe between 2 and 3, I'm just guessing, she's just so calm. Like, she's just so calm, but she's too calm. Like, she's,
Oh no.
do you know what I mean? Like, she's just,
No, I totally
she's
get
like,
that. Yeah.
she's like lazy, but
Yeah.
she was taught that because I was like, you have to behave you're a puppy, but you can't disrupt people's sessions, like, so I didn't jazz her up at the clinic because it was like, we'll just keep the puppy calm. But I think that she just like learned that because at our home clinic, like at home, she largely does whatever she wants. Like,
Yeah, she's quite high energy at home, isn't she?
she's like a lunatic.
Yeah.
Like, she's off the chain. She's constantly like, this is BS. Let's go outside and let's go do another barn hunt. Like, I'll go out to the barn this afternoon and she'll be like, I'm hunting. I'm going to get that mouse, like, for sure. We just bought one of those dog Home Alone balls. Max, have you seen them?
What, with
They're
the
like,
little tags off them? No?
it's a ball and you hang it off the ceiling.
Oh,
and it's a
no.
ball. Oh my God. I'm on the wrong computer. So it's hilarious. It's like, I bought it for the Staffy because it looks like, pictures of Staffies with the toy. Basically, you hang it off the ceiling and it's this ball and you can put treats in it. And then it's got this like cord and it's on a bungee. And so you teach him to like jump up and grab it and tug on it, but then the treats fall out.
Oh, brilliant.
It's so funny. I didn't think Nala was going to get into it, but she was like right into it. Like, this was yesterday. She was right into it. She was like, this is the greatest thing in the world. And so her and this Staffy are like hanging off this thing and like jumping and grabbing it and all stuff. But I honestly think that taking her to work as a pup, because I was trying to keep her from getting crate, because puppies don't have, or young adolescent dogs, they don't have impulse control capability that an adult dog has. So the management side of things is to keep them, don't jazz the dog up, like, keep the dog chilled out. But I think it capped what we can tap
That
into.
is so interesting.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know what I would do. I don't know, I'd probably do the same thing again because I'm a real sucker for that kind of stuff. But
It's hard because you want to share your puppy with people. That was definitely what I did with Bodhi. Was I just made, because I work part-time, so days that I wasn't working with families where I knew the kids were really good with dogs, I would bring Bodhi in and we just have like a 10-minute, 15-minute, play date there in the clinic. And then after the family left, I would do like write a report or whatever. So Bodhi just got used to just hanging out and figuring out that he can, rest and get used to the noises and, people walking down the hallway, because I'm in an office building where there's other businesses and things like that. So that was, how I handled it. But it wasn't, it was like one family at a time. And it was as he was getting, older and older. And part of it for me too is I don't have children of my own. And so getting a dog socialized with kids outside of, those times going into town, but you never know what kinds of kids are going to be, in town. And, and the kids that I work with often are a little more unpredictable than you might, encounter when you're just, out in a store or something. So I wanted to, kind of give him exposure to those kids that are less predictable and see what he would do.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons to all of it. Hey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Decisions.
I was just going to ask Charlotte, have you now thought about what your plan will be for retiring Delta in the future? Like, are there things that you'll do differently, or things you won't
I certainly
do?
hope I can do it slowly. So like right now she comes with me 2 days a week, and I hope, as she gets older, I can do 1 day a week. In my dream world, my office lease is up in 3 years. And in my dream world, I'd love to be able to purchase a small house to work out of so that I could, have more options with the animals, because I do have horses too. And, I would love to incorporate some other animals besides just the dogs in some way. But right now, being in an rented office space, one dog at a time is really, really all that's realistic and safe. But yeah, so if I can, have enough warning, and have it just be something that's just general age related, health concerns. But a lot of it will just depend on, her. Again, she's in great shape. We do everything we can to keep her that way, but there's just no predicting. So hopefully I'll be able to do a slow, phase out, because again, she's so used to coming with me. She gets so excited when I get ready to go in the morning. And the days that like I'm taking Sky, or days that I'm just running errands and not even going to work, if I don't put her bandana on, she literally just like, she'll be wiggling and wiggling excited, and I'll start to leave without her, and her whole body just sinks and she like slunks off like Eeyore and just lays on the bed. And so the idea of doing that to her day after day is heartbreaking to me. But,
Oh, bless her.
we call her Eeyore because when she gets really excited about things, but when she's not, if she at all thinks she's in trouble or feels like she's being ignored, she just like her whole body just okay. She just
bless.
What a
Bless
sweetheart.
So that's one of the things too that will be hard, is just that, what's more stressful for her, leaving her at home or bringing her to work. That will definitely be a consideration as well.
Yeah. My Oliver's only been doing 1 day a week for ages, but he's in here. I'm in here. I'm only at my clinic 2 days a week, and then I work here the other 3 days. So he's in here, but so I think that'll be. He just loves it though. He loves going to the clinic. Like he's everyone's favorite. He just knows how to work a room, especially a waiting room. He can work a waiting room like it's nobody's business. Like it's just a little like trying to poach everyone else's clients. Like just gives them a little look, and he's like, "Pat me," and they're all like, just besotted with him immediately. Yeah. So I'm the boss, so it doesn't matter. But if you weren't, like the other contractors would not be impressed. We're like trying to poach our clients. Should go set up outside someone else's psychology clinic. That'd be funny. What about Charlotte for you? Like, how were these things for you emotionally, mentally, for Lynn? Like, so one of the things I want people to have a think about is having a retirement plan, having a progression plan, one of the things to consider for your retirement plan is that you need, I believe, that what is best is if you retire the dog before there becomes a problem.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
certainly, and that could be something due to cognitive decline, it could be due to mobility, but certainly older senior dogs can get grumpy.
Right.
And that can be a risk to people. So things that used to not upset them before might upset them more as they get older and sort of a little bit like more, and they're just uncomfortable and that sort of stuff. As we all get older, we all experience that.
I was gonna say that sounds like my husband.
Yeah, it's
It's getting crotchety.
Fair bit of that going on around here at the moment as well. So someone has a sore back. So
Oh no.
oh no. Thank goodness for chiropractors. So when we're considering, we might have it, whether it's a senior dog or not a senior dog, like Bodhi, same thing. Like we want to make sure that we're making these decisions for the dogs before the decision is made for us.
Exactly.
Because that's a nightmare. But it was also very important to me that Sonny had a clean record for his whole life. And I knew that would be me letting him down if I let it get to a point where he didn't have a clean record and he was fired, not retired.
Right.
I would never get over that.
Right.
I think
I'm
very dramatic about that sort of stuff, but
no, because that would be the memory that would, linger in your mind. Absolutely.
And he had a perfect record.
That was my nightmare with Bodhi, was like, I don't want that to happen. So,
so he's forever the perfect dog because now he's dead and he can't make any mistakes. So he's a perfect dog forever. So I think considering that in terms of retirement as well, so retirement plan, progression planning. So if we're considering offering animal assisted services, we are going to need a dog. So progression planning, asking questions like, like what you're saying about, choosing the next dog, and how are we going to do that? I think it's a very valid question about the shelter dog stuff. I think it's really tricky. But what about, people considering being able to make these decisions for themselves emotionally as well? Maybe some people have a bit of a feeling that maybe they shouldn't be taking their dog anymore, but maybe it's a bit tricky for them to make the call. Yes, Max. More, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what do you think about that, Charlotte? What was it like for you? Was it just easy and everyone should get over it, or?
No. So like I said, with Johnny, because he was older. I mean, he was 12. And I was so thankful that we'd had so much time. It was an easier decision to make for him. And also I had Bodhi, who was coming in to take his place. And so I was really excited about that next chapter. It definitely would have been harder if I hadn't had that excitement around starting to bring Bodhi to work. It was harder for me with Bodhi. Like I have not been able to bring Bodhi back to my office. There's times where it would be convenient, Bodhi comes and runs errands with me. It'd be convenient to like stop by the office and drop something off. And I just can't bring myself emotionally to see him in that setting. So that part was harder for me. He has transitioned into another role in my life. And he's so perfect, such a perfect fit for that. But
is it barn hunting?
No. So I actually, I have an invisible disability myself. And so he actually ended up making a great transition to service dog. So when I go out in public, he's able to come with me, and he'd already been kind of doing that somewhat. The town I live in is very dog friendly. So most businesses allow, leashed, well-behaved pets anyways, but just kind of making that next transition up to where he could go into grocery stores and things like that with me if I had to go out by myself. And he's so, again, that intensity. Yeah, that intensity, like he's so focused on me. He does the deep pressure input if I'm starting to get upset about something. It's been really great. And, I don't need it all that often, but on days that I do, it's been really it's changed my life being able to have him come with me. And it's that perfect fit of like, he's just focusing on me. It's a great job for him, and it gives him a job because he does have a mind that is constantly looking for something to do. So I can definitely see.
And people
Oh,
aren't
go ahead.
allowed to pet. People aren't allowed to pet the service dog.
Right.
So
Perfect.
perfect.
Right. I occasionally run into like families that I work with, and I just kind of leave it up to him. I'll say, just wait and see. If he comes up to you, that's fine. But otherwise, he's working right now. But yeah, I have that always, just if people do comment on him or ask about him, I can just say, oh, he's working right now. But and he waves. He knows how to wave, so I'll say, I'll have him wave to you and then kind of move on. But yeah, so that's been, it's been kind of a mixed. A lot of mixed emotions there, and that it's, I'm very sad that he isn't able to go to work with me on a regular basis, but I do have this other role that he's been able to fulfill for me. But I don't know that I'll ever be able to, bring him back to the office, even without kids there, just to the emotion of seeing him in that setting. And he jumped in the ball pit with the kids, and he jumped up on the swing with kids and things like that. So, it was a playground for him as much as for the kids that come in to see me, and not being able to have those interactions is still hard, even though it's been 2 years now, almost 2 years. Yeah, 2 years in May, since I chose to stop bringing him. No, not that long. Anyways, it's been a while.
That's so special though, because you're really listening. Like, that's the magic of listening to what your dog is naturally going to want to be when they grow up, and like how that's come about in a beautiful way. That's so beautiful.
Yeah,
Not the job you intended, but it's the job you needed.
Yeah, I have a blog on my website, and that's actually the next blog that's coming out. I believe next Friday I have it scheduled for. Is just Bodhi's transition from therapy work to service work, and why I chose to make that decision for him, and what he does to help me out, and why that's been a good fit for him temperament wise. But that's not going to be every dog or every handler's case when they retire, but it's been a great option for us.
I mean, it's good to know. I think for people, it's good to know how hard that was for you, and that you did it anyway, and you made that choice and retired him, and it sounds like it was the right choice for him, definitely. But it's like still acknowledging for yourself too, like, but it sucks. Like, that sucks, and it makes me sad and maybe a bit disappointed, or like whatever other feelings. And maybe
I always wonder, is there something more I could have done? I don't really think there is. I think it's just his inherent temperament. Like the farther out I get from it, I just seeing him thriving in this other role as a service dog, it really is just, just what he was made for. But, I do always wonder, like, what if I'd socialized him more, or what if I'd, done this, or all those things.
Yeah. I think, there would be a lot of people, in that scenario, or maybe the decision, something happened to the dog or whatever, and that changed the trajectory for the dog for, whatever reason, or, things like that. But it's good to have that example of, it sucks, but ultimately always putting the dog first and making good choices for them, and not putting them into situations that, I just think it's like the euthanasia phone call. As hard as that is for me to do, that's my responsibility to do the hard things in this relationship. I have to make these hard decisions because I'm your guardian, so when you get faced with a tough call like that, and if anyone's listening on going like, oh my God, feeling really challenged about your own dog, whether it's just their temperament, and how much they're enjoying the work, or if they're aging out, or for whatever reason you're considering retiring them, I think try and be really kind to yourself through the process as well, because that's hard.
And I think for me too, and with both Johnny Utah and Bodhi too, once I did make that decision, I felt that it was the right decision. Like, I really struggled with it. And then once the decision was made of like, here's our last day, it was just that sense of relief of like, okay, this is the new normal, to use a cliche, but just getting past that decision is the biggest part. But then your brain tells you it's the right decision. So being able to listen to that.
That was the same with the euthanasia phone call. Making the call was way harder than once the call was made, and then going through that process like sucked, but then it's easier once it's not happening right now anymore. So maybe there's some tips we can give people to finish up on, which we'll talk about your resources and stuff as well. So Maxine, can you remind us to do that? Maybe there's some tips and stuff we can give to people around, okay, well, if you are thinking about retiring your dog, or you've got questions about whether or not they are suitable, maybe there's a way that people can do like a pseudo retirement, or, you know, something like that. Like maybe don't take them in for a week or so and just find an excuse why, or
Yeah.
maybe there's something like that people can do to kind of help themselves. And, you know, then if you give them a couple of weeks off, I mean, school dogs get the school holidays off as well. So maybe during that time, have a bit of self-evaluation and reflection as well on, okay, so is the dog like actually just happy at home? You know, like, is that, and then when you go to work without your dog, is that actually heaps less stressful and heaps easier? Because yeah, being a therapy dog handler is stressful and it's hard, and you know, it's going to be harder than doing non-animal assisted therapies in some ways, and in some ways it makes your job easier. But
yes.
I think if there's a lot of cognitive load, and there's a lot of sort of maybe even mild to moderate chronic stress kind of thing. So I had just started having Sunny out of the room at home for certain clients, the really playful kids, because what I realized was happening is that my heart was in my throat because he wanted to play. And so they were like throwing toys and stuff, and I was like, oh my God, he's gonna get hurt. Like he just can't handle at this age, like he just can't handle this kind of, and I would just be feeling like, oh my goodness, oh my, and feeling like trying to stop kids from doing that sort of stuff. And then I realized I was doing that, and I was like, oh, that's not really the point of this, Sam. Like,
yeah,
it's not really the point that you like don't let kids play with the dogs. And I had to like realize, because he wanted to be in there, like he wanted to be in there and playing. It was just that I was going like, he's gonna slip and hurt himself. And I had to go like, okay, so you're gonna have to take him out. And then I compromised with myself over, there were certain kids that do a lot of that sort of play, and then there's heaps of kids and clients that don't do any of that. And so he could still be in for those clients because it didn't matter, you know. But I guess, so for all the rambling, but I'm trying to maybe help people understand maybe and identify that feeling for themselves as well. Like if you, and you might not notice it, like I do heaps of self-reflection. So we might not notice it, that it's happening straight away, but maybe through this conversation, people might start to think like, am I doing that? Like, am I being pretty controlling over how people are allowed to interact with the dog? Why am I doing that? And what am I thinking? Like it's going to upset the dog, or the dog's going to bite them, or like, why is it that I'm doing that? For me, it was purely just that I think he's going to slip and hurt himself and do a cruciate. And what am I going to do with a 12-year-old Labrador with a cruciate injury? Like, do you know what I mean? So it got too much, and I just had to go, you know what? We just take him out, because this isn't helpful for anyone.
But like you're saying, Sam, basically you were slowing it down, like it was a progressive thing. And I think maybe some people are stressed about it being so final. And I'm hearing from both you and Charlotte here is like that it can be at your pace as well as the dogs. Because
I think it somewhat depends on the setting that you work in too. Because again, I have my own private practice. It's, you know, it's just me. So to some extent I can change around my schedule. You know, it's not always practical because families aren't able to come just whenever, but you know, if I could work my schedule so that I had, you know, an afternoon where it was all, you know, the calmer kids that are, you know, going to be a little bit easier on, you know, say Delta as she's getting older. You know, there is the potential for that, you know, whether or not that would work out in reality or not. But yeah, like, and my caseload varies so much. Like right now I have a bunch of young, really rambunctious kids.
Yeah.
And so it works well because I have Sky, who's young and rambunctious and will go all day, and then Delta's still feeling really good. But like when I first started with Delta, I just happened to have a caseload. I had a lot of adolescents on my caseload and older kids that were able to sit, and so her introduction to the work was a little bit easier in that regard, and that, she wasn't trying to, I mean, I had a few kids, but it wasn't, kid after kid that's bouncing off the walls that she's trying to figure out how to how to interact with. So, it kind of just depends on your caseload and your setting and, your employment, whether how much decision making you have on that setting.
I think those are excellent points as well for people to think about, Charlotte. I really think that it's such an individual thing, and it's not clear cut, and it's not like, okay, the dog's 10, retire them. Like I don't think it's as simple as that. I think, being very sort of in tune with your situation and in tune with your dog, and then maybe just giving yourself some time and preparing yourself mentally for this, because it can be hard to accept. And it was hard for me to say, like, Sonny can't play with these kids anymore. Like, he's been doing it for like 11 years. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's hard to go like, oh, he's old, like even accepting that your senior dog is old can be kind of confronting as well. So, but what we're hearing is like, we need to have a think about it, and that progression planning, I think, is I found that super helpful. Like the fact that I've got stacked dogs, like they're all 4 years apart. So, I've stacked the dogs so that that's one thing off my one load off my mind. So it sounds like you
and
have
then
similar
just
experience.
one other thing I just thought of too is I definitely, like Delta's around 9, her last vet appointment, the vet, gave me an option, like, do you want to do senior blood work? She's, you don't have any concerns, but we can do it. And I just went ahead and said, yeah, let's just make sure. I definitely would see, spending a little extra money on, those just checkup sorts of things to make sure you're able to catch anything early on. And, and having a vet that does, really look at all their joints and things like that. Because with Delta being a larger dog, that's my number one concern is arthritis. And having dealt with that with a past dog and seeing how debilitating arthritis can get for these guys. And again, the behavior changes that you can see if they do have that pain, that may not show up in how they're moving, but it can show up in their behavior. But again, that's another load for us as therapy dog handlers, is there are more expenses. And I don't know for sure. I'm guessing it's the same in Australia, where, we don't get reimbursed more because we're bringing the dogs. So it's all just expenses that we choose to put out or choose to pay in order to have the benefits that come with having the animal assisted services.
That's how it is here at the moment too. So I mean, people can choose, like we're in private practice, so you can choose, but I think the majority of us there's no additional cost. Although interestingly, I had this conversation with someone the other day about how we are struggling with having families insisting that their appointments are with dogs, which is a logistical nightmare. Because it's fine for me. I've got however many dogs, so I've got dogs, I just rotate them, like Nala does a day, Oliver does a day, and then everyone's here anyway. So that's fine. But our other clinicians, they've got one dog, so they don't work a dog 5 days a week, but they are seeing clients 5 days a week. So we do have a bit of a challenge with people only wanting to book in on the dog days. So the contractors end up,
oh no,
really
of course,
on the dog days, and then they're not busy on the other days, and it's like it puts you in another ethical dilemma as well around, so do you work the dog more because that's the demand that's being put on by the client? We don't do that, but some people might feel like they need to do that.
The temptation would certainly be there.
Yeah, exactly. And so we've had to get quite strict with our admin. We used to take a wait list for dog appointments, people that were waiting, because we're okay, well, all of our clients, all of our contractors are fully booked for dog appointments, so we can't squeeze you in, new client,
Right.
but there is
There's
space.
only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, but there's
Yeah.
space on a non-dog day, but a new client still won't book in on a non-dog day. Like they're like, nope, we'll just wait for a dog day. And so we had this big wait list, and I was like, we're just gonna have to contact all those people and say we're not keeping a wait list for that. Like you either need to see a psychologist or you don't. So I get it that the dog is like great and super helpful and all those sorts of things, and you can certainly express your interest that you want to be moved to a dog day whenever possible, but we can't keep 100 names on a wait list that are waiting for a dog day. Like, it's when are we going to ever be able to service that? So I've actually started thinking, I'm like, I wonder if people would still do that if it costs more. Like, I wonder if people would still do that. So now it's like this, because I've always said we'll never charge more, because I feel like that would be what makes people overwork their dogs, would be, oh, well, I'm going to get an extra $20 an hour. So get in the car, dog.
Yeah.
But now I actually think, but wouldn't that equal out to, well, on Tuesdays I make no money because I've got no dog, and on Wednesdays I make money because I've got the dog on Wednesday, so I'll just bring the dog in on Tuesday. So then essentially the dog's going to get overworked that way. Do you know what I mean? I just think
what about when the dog's unwell or sick and they don't have a dog to bring in on those days, and then they're paying extra, but the dog's not there? Yeah, that's tricky.
But you couldn't, like, you would just not charge.
Or you just would bring the cost down. That's tough for the clinician though, because then it's also,
we can't be
that's really tricky.
That's having this problem. We can't be the only, like, it must be happening to other clinics.
And do you think it's also going to put clinicians at risk? I know you were saying with you don't, when you're offering services as a psychologist. The animal, the dog is just a bonus. But do you think adding the cost is going to imply that they're paying for the dog service? Because I remember you saying that was also not.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
right. I think the other challenge with that would be too, just thinking about even like kids that I have that come that most of the time the dog's really involved with, but there are days that Delta's tired because of something that's happened earlier in the day, or for whatever reason we just don't actively involve the dog in that particular session. Maybe we're working on something that, I don't really need her help for. Just having that balance of, if you're saying the dog's going to be there, what does that imply? Are they just in the room, or are they doing something that you maybe couldn't do without their help?
That's exactly,
it's
like,
so varied from session to session.
And I think it opens a can of worms then to, like, well, we paid for this dog to be here, so like, do something, dog, whereas, because they're not paying any extra for the dog to be there, if, like, if I don't see it as clinically useful for the dog to be doing anything right now, then I don't make them do stuff, like,
And then I've also had, just recently, I had a family that I brought onto my caseload, and the mom was like, oh, he'll love the dogs. He'll be so excited. And then the kid didn't have any interest in the dog whatsoever, would actually, not really fearful, but would actually kind of prefer that she not be real close, especially Sky, my little one, who's real rambunctious. He's kind of like, it's a little too much for me. And so I kind of went from, in my mind, thinking this was going to be a great fit to, if I'd known in advance, I probably wouldn't have scheduled this kid onto my caseload. I probably would have referred them elsewhere. So, especially if you're working with kids, what the caregiver is requesting versus what might actually be the best fit.
Wonder whether that's when props come into it, like utilizing props more, where you can incorporate the dog even if the dog isn't there. Maybe that has to just be like a more, like, you use certain things.
Like animal related
engagement. Yeah, exactly. Like therapy dog related stuff more.
But like, that's where you just walk into this funny area,
gray area,
of like, and how does that position the client? Like, what's their understanding of this extra $20 that they paid? What's their understanding of how that adds value to? Whereas we could just go, well, it's supply and demand. Like, that's how business works. Sorry. Like, it's supply and demand. Like, some clinics will charge more for we'll charge more for after business hours appointments. Because none of our clients, oh, actually, I think one contractor's doing after hours. But like if we do a night, we charge more for after 5 p.m. appointments because like, well, those are obviously in high demand. So there's a supply and demand thing there too. So you could go that way. The other way that you could conceptualize it as well as a cleaning fee. Just from purely from a framing perspective of like, oh no, it's not so the dog does things. It's like to care for the dog, like cleaning the dog, cleaning the room, cleaning the blankets that we have to put over the couches. Like it's like a fee for all the extra shit we have to do for the dog to be here, kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like that would
I know
probably work.
I accept insurance, so I get third-party payers are for most of my kids are what's paying the bills. And I did try to renegotiate my contract with one of the insurance companies here recently, and I included the animal assisted therapy as a part of that, as this kind of specialized niche that I provide, and provided support and evidence based on how that helps. And they didn't go for it. I wasn't successful in getting my rates. I didn't really think I would be, because that's just an issue nationwide here with the insurance rates just being really stuck for the past decade plus. But I thought maybe I'm like, maybe they'll see the benefit and see the added costs, and it didn't work, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know how we got into talking about that, but certainly certainly guys, progression planning and retirement planning I think is pretty important. So yeah, hopefully this conversation helps you to maybe just stop and have a bit of a think about that stuff. But these topics, like even what we were just talking about trying to manage client expectations and supply and demand of available dog appointments versus not available dog staff and things like that. Yeah, it's important that we have conversations like that so that we're all sort of think tanking stuff, like what's the go here and what do we do? Actually, if anyone's in private practice and that resonates with you, just want to flick me an email and tell me the answer. Thank you.
That would be very helpful.
Tell us all the answer. I thought I had it kind of sorted, but it's actually an ongoing, we're managing it, but it's an ongoing, it still pops up, like, and it drives me nuts. It's like an ick for me, like personally. So I know that I've got a personal thing about it, because I just, in my brain, cannot understand that if your child needs psychology, then your child needs psychology, and having the dog would be great, but the point is the psychology. So even without the dog, we still do the psychology. Like, I just can't really understand it, because I know that not all the clients that contact us need the dog. Like I
wonder if some of that is just media portrayal too, because I know I've seen like news stories here, or people will refer me to things that are online where it's like, animal assisted therapy is this miracle cure. And I definitely think there are sessions and moments and kids where it is like, I don't know what I would have done without my dog there that particular day, but it is at the heart of it is our underlying professional skills and strategies that we use. And like you say, it's great to have the dog in addition, but I do think there's some kind of just cultural portrayal of, as therapy dogs are becoming more popular, and service dogs and, just working dogs overall, that there is this idea that it's bigger and better and, what you need.
I think the media has a lot to do with it, actually, Charlotte, because we have the same thing over here. And also word of mouth for us is big too. So someone else's kid came to our clinic, and they were very happy with the service, but they sort of maybe must think that it's all because of the dogs, not because of
I've got that too.
Excellent clinicians that we have to have these fantastic clinicians here that would have, eventually built rapport with you anyway. Just like it's sort of like easier for us with the dogs. Like things are easier in lots of ways with the dogs, but we still would have done a good job, I'm pretty sure. Like I can't say for certain because I haven't.
We're working really hard over here.
Yeah, like I think maybe it's about us as well, but I think it's the word of mouth issue where people saying, oh, you've got to go see whoever, and you like they've got a dog, and it's great. And then the media portrayal of like it's going to solve everything with the dog. And like you said though, Charlotte, like I've got clients that like, thank God I've got animals, because there was no way, like the ones that have already been everywhere else and tried everything else, and
Yes.
like, and they get here and I'm like, whoo, like this is going to be a ride. Like,
Yep.
whoa.
That's what got me started on this in the first place, was one of those
Yeah.
kids that had been, his mom said, fired from several other therapies
Yep.
and extracurricular stuff. And I was
Yep.
like, how in the world am I gonna get this kid doing anything? And
Yeah.
for him, it was the dog.
Yep. Yeah. Like heaps of kids like that. Like that's how they usually ended up with us, is like that sort of story. But yeah. So Charlotte, you've got some what's your website? Because you've got some pretty cool resources and stuff on there. How can people
Yeah.
find you?
So I've got a website. It's www.speechdogs.com. I've got lots of resources on there. Everything from online links. I've got the blog. I absolutely love writing about this topic. So I try to put out a blog about twice a month. And sometimes I have some guests that contribute to that. I just recently had one with some other speech therapists and educators that were incorporating dogs into social emotional learning. And so that was a really fun one to write. And like I said, I had one recently about Johnny Utah and all the things I learned from my high energy therapy dog. And then I've got one coming out on Bodhi. But I also have a book. So the American Speech Language Hearing Association, they have a small offshoot that's Asha Press, and they published a book that I wrote last year, which was just really cool to see them get on board. Once I contacted them with the idea, they really ran with it and made it a much better book than it would have been if I had chosen to self-publish. So I'm super proud of how it turned out, and
Very
I'm just
cool.
continuing to learn. All the time and trying to pass on the things that I learn. And so, so I've got a course for speech therapists as well, if they're interested in doing an online course. Trying to think what else. I do have some YouTube videos as well, just a few, but it's the Speech Dogs channel. It's a little bit hard to find. Again, it's speech underlined dogs, but there's a lot of things that come up. Speeches about, if you just Google speeches about dogs, or, there are some speech therapists who have taught their dogs to push buttons to request things. And sometimes those, you kind of have to wade through those to get to my stuff. But
Actually, I was going to say, Charlotte, maybe send me an email with some of those links, and then I can put them in the description so everyone can find them straight away too.
If you go to the Speech Dogs website page, there's a link to the YouTube.
Yep,
from there. Like go to the website
and
first,
Instagram.
and then click on it from there. It'll take you straight there.
Yeah, and I'll include your website in the description as well, so everyone can find you easily.
Your free roadmap to adding a therapy dog to your practice, which is the little PDF guide for people as well. They can jump on and that pops up straight away, and people can pop their email in and
I tried
see
to
that.
make that fairly in-depth. That's a 12-page. It's got lots of information in there if you're just even considering this, to see what, because it's quite the journey. Again, not to be cliche, but it is definitely a journey towards incorporating a speech dog. It's not something like, a lot of times as speech therapists, we can take like a weekend course and implement it that Monday with kids. And it's not like that at all. It's definitely a learning and bonding journey.
Definitely. Yes, absolutely. But there's all sorts of stuff on here. You've got all like free resources, you've got online course stuff, there's all sorts of stuff in here. So, and congratulations on the book. That is super exciting. Pause for progress.
That was like 2 years of my life went into that. It was very intense, but I'm super excited with how it turned out.
Amazing.
I don't know how people write books. Like
Neither do I.
Get like through an email, and by the end of the email, I'm like, I've had enough of this topic. Like
there's a lot of stories throughout the book too. So there's some stories about Johnny Utah in there, because he was so integral in teaching me what becoming an animal assisted handler was. So.
Pause for progress, integrating animal assisted interventions into your speech language pathology practice. Now, even if you're not a speechy, guys, you know that all of our intervention ideas, they can be like upcycled to whatever field you're in. So it's like a think tank. So don't think that, I'm not a speechy, so I don't need Charlotte's book. Like I think you'll find that when you read about other people's intervention ideas, that's what you'll be able to tailor it to like what would work in your setting. And it just sparks all those other new ideas where you go like, oh my gosh, I could do like a version of that that's like this. And then you guys can
And
write
again,
your
I
own
work
book.
with kids. So the examples are all with kids, but I could totally see, including a lot of this with adults, like in, stroke rehab and things like that too. I think therapy dogs would be fantastic. So
yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Well, thank you so
Wow.
much for your time, Sharlet.
You're welcome.
Staying up to talk to us. And
yeah, it's Sunday evening for Charlotte, so
Yeah.
thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you're interested in studying with Therapy Dogs Australia, or you have a few more questions before deciding, please get in touch with us by emailing courses@therapydog.com.au or visiting our website at www.therapydog.com.au for more information and FAQs.